"You're not walking down that aisle with us." Those were the exact words my mother, Patricia, said to me 3 hours before my wedding ceremony. Not congratulations, not we're proud of you, but a flat-out rejection that hit me like a freight train. I was standing in the bridal suite at Riverside Gardens, still in my robe, my wedding dress hanging behind me. My hands were shaking as I held my phone, having just finished what I thought was a routine check-in call. "What do you mean?" I whispered. "I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss." My father, Richard, cleared his throat in the background. "Sweetheart, we've been thinking about this for weeks. We just can't be seen supporting this spectacle." Spectacle. That's what my wedding had become to them. The reason? My fiancé Marcus wasn't what they had envisioned. He was a firefighter. Respectable, sure, but not the lawyer or doctor they'd hoped for. More importantly, he came from what my mother delicately called a different background. "But Mom," I said, my voice cracking, "you RSVP'd yes 6 months ago. You helped me pick out flowers." "That was before we fully understood what this would look like," she interrupted. "Before we realized how many of Marcus's people would be there." His people. She meant his large, loving family who had welcomed me with open arms. His father who worked construction, his mother who cleaned houses, his siblings who were teachers and mechanics. Good, honest people who had shown me more warmth in 2 years than my own family had in decades. "We've already told the Hendersons that we won't be attending," Dad added. "We explained there were irreconcilable differences." I sank into the chair behind me. "You told people you're not coming to your own daughter's wedding?" "We're doing what's best for everyone," Mom said coldly. The call ended with a click. I sat there, staring at my reflection. In 3 hours, I was supposed to marry the man I loved more than anything, and I was supposed to do it completely alone. My maid of honor, Jessica, walked in with coffee and immediately saw my face. "What happened?" I told her everything, every cold, calculated word. "They're not coming," I finished. "After everything, they're just not coming." But what I didn't know was that in just a few hours, someone else would step forward. Someone who understood exactly what this moment meant and would change everything I thought I knew about family. Growing up as Sophia Catherine Morrison in Westfield Heights was like living in a perfectly curated museum. Everything had to be just so. The right schools, friends, activities, image projected to the right people. My parents were society fixtures. Dad was a partner at Morrison Klein & Associates, one of the city's most prestigious law firms. Mom was president of the Garden Club, served on charity boards, never missed a country club gala. They lived for appearances, for the carefully orchestrated dance of social status. Our house on Maple Ridge Drive was colonial perfection, with manicured lawns and imported marble. Everything was beige, cream, or muted gold, colors that whispered refinement and old money. I was their only child and their greatest social project. Piano lessons at 4, cotillion at 12, debutante ball at 18. I attended Westfield Prep, where classmates' parents were senators and CEOs. I was expected to excel, be perfect, marry well, and continue the Morrison legacy. For most of my childhood, I played the part beautifully. Valedictorian, student body president, debate team captain, I dated Preston Caldwell, a federal judge's son, destined for Harvard Law, everything my parents wanted. But college changed me. At Northwestern, away from suffocating expectations, I discovered who I actually was. I studied journalism, wrote for the campus newspaper, and met people from different worlds. That's where I met Marcus Thompson. He was a transfer student, 3 years older, working his way through school while training to become a firefighter. He was everything my parents never wanted me to associate with: working class, straightforward, unimpressed by status symbols. His idea of a perfect evening was cooking dinner together, not attending charity galas. When I brought him home for Christmas junior year, the temperature dropped 20 degrees. Mom made polite conversation, but I could see her cataloging everything: his scuffed shoes, not knowing which fork to use, how he thanked our housekeeper personally instead of ignoring her. After he left, Dad sat me down. He seems nice, but you need to think about your future, Sophia, about the kind of life you want. I am thinking about my future, I replied, with someone who makes me happy. Mom joined us. Happiness is wonderful, darling, but it's not everything. You need someone who can provide for you properly. Marcus will be a firefighter. That's serving the community. It's admirable, Dad acknowledged, but not practical. Not for someone with your background. They never said it outright, but the message was clear. Marcus wasn't good enough. He would never be good enough. The engagement dinner 2 years later was a disaster. Marcus's parents drove up from their small town. His dad wore his best suit, clean but clearly not expensive. His mom brought homemade rolls and kept offering to help in the kitchen. My parents spoke to the Thompsons like they were interviewing service providers rather than welcoming future family. When Marcus's sister mentioned studying to be a teacher, Mom responded with, "How noble," in a tone that made it sound like joining the circus. After they left, the real conversation began. "This cannot happen," Mom said flatly. "This is not the life we raised you for." "We raised you to have standards," Dad added sharply. "Marcus is a good man," I said. "He's kind, honest, works hard." "He's beneath you," Mom interrupted. That was the moment I realized we lived in completely different worlds. They saw class and status. I saw character and love. Wedding planning became a Cold War. They attended exactly 2 venue visits before becoming, quote, too busy. They made snide comments about our budget, guest list, our choice to have the ceremony at a garden venue instead of the country club. But I pressed forward, believing that on the day itself, when they saw how happy Marcus made me, something would shift. Some parental instinct would choose their daughter over their prejudices. I was completely, devastatingly wrong. What my parents never bothered to learn was that while they whispered about Marcus's limited prospects, I was quietly building something they'd never expected, a successful, independent career. It started senior year with an internship at Chicago Metropolitan Magazine. When their junior writer quit unexpectedly, I pitched a story about urban gentrification. The editor was impressed enough to let me run with it. The article got picked up by 3 other publications and opened doors. After graduation, instead of taking the appropriate job at Dad's firm, I stayed in Chicago. I rented a tiny studio and took a staff position at Chicago Metropolitan for a salary that would have made my parents laugh, if they'd known. But I wasn't just writing. During lunch breaks, I freelanced for online publications. Evenings and weekends, I worked on a book proposal about the changing American middle class. I interviewed families like Marcus's, people who measured success by stability and happiness rather than stock portfolios. The proposal landed me an agent, Sarah Kim. Within 6 months, we had a 3-book deal with Harper Publishing. The advance was $200,000 for the first book alone. But I didn't tell anyone. Not even Marcus knew the full extent. I wanted to prove I could build something entirely on my own merit, without family connections. The book, Middle Ground: Stories from America's Working Heart, was scheduled for publication 3 months after our wedding. Early reviews called it insightful, necessary, and a fresh voice in social commentary. My freelance career was exploding. I was writing for The Atlantic, Washington Post, and New York Times. My articles about economic inequality and community resilience were being shared thousands of times. I'd been invited to speak at conferences and universities. In 18 months, I'd gone from the Morrison disappointment to a published author with a growing national reputation. I was making more money than Dad had at my age, building something meaningful. Marcus's family embraced my work from the beginning. His mother would call about articles she'd read. I shared that piece about small-town businesses with everyone at church. People need to hear about their work matters. His father once told me, "You see people the way they really are, not how society tells you to." That's a gift. They understood what my parents couldn't. I wasn't writing about Marcus's world from outside looking in with pity. I was writing because I genuinely believed it had value, because I'd found a more authentic community in Marcus's family kitchen than in 25 years of country club dinners. 2 weeks before the wedding, everything changed. 60 Minutes called. They wanted to interview me about the book. They were doing a segment on young journalists redefining social commentary. The interview was scheduled for the week after our honeymoon. I sat in our apartment after getting the call, looking at wedding favor boxes we'd been assembling. Marcus was at the firehouse. The apartment was quiet except for traffic, and my heart beat as the producer explained the interview. "We're particularly interested in your perspective as someone who bridges different socioeconomic worlds," she said. After hanging up, I realized that in 6 months, I'd go from being the girl my parents were ashamed of to someone with a national platform and voice people wanted to hear. But none of that mattered as much as the fact that in 2 weeks, I'd marry the man who'd seen my worth before any external validation existed. Marcus had loved me when I was just an uncertain graduate with dreams and a laptop. He'd supported my late nights, interviews, research trips, my passion for overlooked stories. He'd never suggested I was too good for his world, or that his world wasn't good enough for me. He'd simply loved me exactly as I was. As I packed the last wedding favors, I realized something obvious. I wasn't marrying down or settling. I was choosing the family that had seen my value from the beginning, over the one that only measured worth in terms they understood. What I didn't know was that someone else had been watching my journey too, someone who understood exactly what I was building and why it mattered. The phone call that unraveled everything came at 2:47 p.m. on Tuesday, 4 days before my wedding. I was addressing thank you notes when my editor David called. "Sophia, I hope you're sitting down. Good Morning America wants you next Tuesday to talk about the book." My pen froze. Good Morning America? A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. The segment is about emerging voices in social commentary. They mentioned your Atlantic piece about economic dignity. This is huge. Potential bestseller territory. After I hung up, my agent texted, "Did David call? This is it, Sophia. This is your moment." What I didn't know was that across town, my mother was having lunch at the country club when Margaret Whitfield's daughter Caroline approached their table. Caroline worked in media publicity and had just seen the advance press release. "Mrs. Morrison," Caroline said excitedly, "I just saw something about Sophia. Is she really going to be on Good Morning America?" Mom nearly choked on her wine. "What?" Caroline showed her the press release. Sophia Morrison, author of Middle Ground, Stories from America's Working Heart, will appear on Good Morning America to discuss her groundbreaking work on class and community. It says she's a regular contributor to The Atlantic and New York Times. I had no idea Sophia was so successful. Mom's face went pale. There must be some mistake. "This says she has a 3-book deal with Harper Publishing," Margaret added, reading over Caroline's shoulder. "That's one of the biggest publishers in the country." "And look," Caroline continued, scrolling, "she has a Wikipedia page. Her pandemic article was nominated for a National Magazine Award. She's been speaking at universities nationwide." Mom's hands shook as she set down her wine glass. "I need to make a phone call." She tried me first, but I was in a podcast interview, so she called Dad. "Richard," she said without preamble, "we have a problem." She explained Caroline's discovery. Dad immediately started fact-checking. Within an hour, he'd confirmed everything and found more. "Patricia, our daughter isn't some freelance writer playing around. She's building a legitimate career. Her book advance alone was probably more than most of our friends' children make in their first year out of college." But it got worse. Dad discovered my upcoming 60 Minutes interview was specifically about young journalists challenging traditional narratives about class and success. The segment was titled New Voices, Old Truths, and I was going to discuss how growing up privileged had given me insight into the arbitrary nature of social hierarchies. In other words, I was about to tell national television about exactly the attitudes that had led my parents to reject Marcus and refuse to attend my wedding. "She's going to be on national television talking about class discrimination," Mom said during their emergency dinner meeting. "What if someone asks about her family? What if she mentions us?" "Patricia," Dad said quietly, "I think we've made a serious error in judgment." Meanwhile, that evening, Marcus's sister Emma called with her own news. "Sophia, my professor mentioned your name in class today. Dr. Martinez is using your Atlantic article in her sociology curriculum. She said you're one of the most promising young voices in social commentary." After we hung up, I realized my two worlds were about to collide publicly. In less than a week, I'd be married to the man my parents thought was beneath me. Then I'd be on national television discussing the very prejudices that led them to that conclusion. They'd refuse to walk me down the aisle because they thought I was throwing my life away. By the time they discovered who I'd really become, it would be too late to take back their choice. I called Marcus at the firehouse to tell him about the TV appearances. "I'm proud of you," he said simply. "I always knew the world would figure out what I knew the day I met you, that you're extraordinary." "My parents still don't know about any of this." "They will soon," he said. "The question is, will it matter to you when they do?" The first call came at 6:23 a.m. the morning after my parents discovered my success. I was in the hotel room before the wedding, trying to meditate away from their rejection. "Sophia, sweetheart," Mom's voice was frantic. "We need to talk. Right away." I put the phone on speaker and continued breathing exercises. "If this is about the wedding, we already talked." "No, that's what I'm calling about. We found out about your book deal, about the television appearances, about everything." There it was, the real reason. "And?" I said neutrally. "We had no idea how successful you've become. If we had known." "If you had known, what? You would have approved of Marcus?" Pause. "We would have understood that this isn't what we thought." "What exactly did you think it was?" "We thought you were making an impulsive decision, limiting your potential, but clearly you've built something remarkable." "Because you never asked," I said quietly. "Not once did you ask about my work beyond those little articles." "We're asking now," Dad joined the conversation. "We want to understand. We want to be part of your life." "Today? On my wedding day? After calling it a spectacle yesterday?" "We made a mistake," Mom said quickly. "We let our preconceptions cloud our judgment about Marcus and what you were building." "Your preconceptions? Is that what we're calling prejudice now?" "We're calling to apologize and ask if we can still come. We want to walk you down the aisle. After you found out about Good Morning America. After we realized how wrong we were. About me or about Marcus?" Long pause. "About the whole situation," Dad said finally. "That's not an answer. Do you think Marcus is good enough now? Or do you just think I'm successful enough that marrying him won't reflect poorly on you?" "That's not fair," Mom said. "Isn't it? Yesterday you called this wedding a spectacle. What changed? Marcus is the same man, his family is the same. The only difference is you found out I'm going to be on television." "We found out you're not throwing your life away," Dad said. "My potential was never dependent on Marcus. The fact that you couldn't see it says everything about you and nothing about him." Mom tried differently. "Families forgive each other. Families move past mistakes." "Do they?" "Because Marcus's family never once suggested I wasn't good enough. They never made me feel like I had to prove my worth." "We're asking you to let us celebrate who you are," Dad said. "You want to celebrate with me now. After Good Morning America. After Harper Publishing. But were you proud when I was just Sophia in love with a firefighter?" Silence. "The answer is no. You were ashamed. And the only thing that's changed is you think my success will make your disapproval look bad. Can we see you come to the hotel?" I thought about Marcus, surrounded by people who'd loved him unconditionally. About his parents, who'd driven up to help set up chairs and hang lights, who'd treated me like a daughter from day one. "No, you can't come to the hotel. And you can't come to the wedding. We're your parents, we love you. If you loved me, you would have been proud of me for choosing happiness. You would have welcomed Marcus. You would have seen his character instead of his bank account. We can learn, we can change. Maybe. But you can't undo telling me my wedding was a spectacle. You can't undo refusing to walk me down the aisle when you thought I was just Sophia the journalist instead of Sophia the TV personality." I was quiet, gathering thoughts. "I'm getting married today to a man who has supported me every day for 2 years. I'll be surrounded by people who chose to be there because they care about us, not because they want to be associated with my career." "And us?" Mom whispered. "You made your choice. Now I'm making mine." I hung up and turned off my phone. At 4:30 p.m., 90 minutes before the ceremony, my parents showed up at Riverside Gardens anyway. I was in the bridal suite with Jessica when the coordinator knocked. There are 2 people here who say they're your parents. Tell them she's busy, Jessica said firmly. It's okay, I said, looking at myself in the mirror. The woman staring back looked strong, ready. I'll talk to them, but not alone. We found them in the lobby, looking out of place among the rustic decor. Mom clutched her purse with white knuckles. Sophia, Mom said immediately, you look beautiful. Thank you, but you shouldn't be here. We couldn't let you get married without trying once more, Dad said. We want to make it right. What exactly can you make right? We want to walk you down the aisle, show Marcus's family we accept this marriage. Show Marcus's family, not because you've had a genuine change of heart, but because you want to show them something. That's not what I meant. It's exactly what you meant. Do you know what Marcus's father told me last night? We're not losing a son, we're gaining a daughter. His mother said, thank you for making our boys so happy. They were celebrating love. They weren't thinking about what anyone would think. We want to celebrate you too, Dad said. No, you want to be seen celebrating with me. There's a difference. We're trying to apologize, Mom said, her composure cracking. You're trying to manage your reputation. You found out I'm going to be on television and suddenly you're worried about how it'll look that you skipped my wedding. That's not... It is. And I know, because if this was about supporting Marcus and me, you would have asked about him. How he's doing, his plans, brought him a gift. But you haven't mentioned him once. I paused, watching their faces. If you really understood what you did wrong, you would have called Marcus to apologize, reached out to his parents, made an effort to understand the family I'm joining instead of just minimizing embarrassment. We didn't think exactly the problem. You didn't think about anyone but yourselves. I walked to the window overlooking the garden where guests were taking seats. Marcus's family filled the first 3 rows. People who'd driven hours, made sacrifices because they understood that love is something you show up for. Do you see Marcus's family? His 92-year-old grandmother is in a wheelchair, difficult for her to travel, but she's here. His cousin drove 12 hours from Colorado because he couldn't afford to fly. His father took unpaid time off work to be here for 3 days to help celebrate. I turned back to them. These people made real sacrifices, not because they had to, but because they wanted to, because they understand love is something you show up for, not something you calculate the cost of. We understand that now, Dad said. Do you? 36 hours ago, you calculated the cost and decided it was too high. You weighed your reputation against your daughter's happiness, and reputation won. We were wrong, Mom whispered. Being wrong isn't the same as understanding why. Tell me, what does Marcus do when he's not fighting fires? They looked at each other blankly. You don't know. You've known about him for 2 years and don't know anything beyond his job title. I told them about his literacy volunteering, his Little League coaching, his family's community service. These aren't people beneath anyone. These are people who contribute, who care, who measure success by the good they can do rather than the money they accumulate. We see that now. No, you see my career success and you're recalculating the social cost, but you still don't see their value independent of my achievements. Here's what's happening. I'm marrying Marcus in 45 minutes. I'm walking down that aisle with joy and love, and you're leaving. We're your parents, Mom said desperately. Yes, and I hope someday you'll figure out how to be parents who show up without conditions, who welcome choices without calculations, who love my partner because I love him. I walked toward the door, then turned back. When you can honestly say you're proud of me for choosing love over status, when you can sit at Marcus's family's table and see them as equals, when you can apologize to them as much as you're apologizing to me, then we can talk about being family again. How long do we have to wait? As long as it takes. I've spent 25 years trying to earn your approval. I'm done. If you want to be part of my life, you'll accept me as I am and respect the family I'm choosing. We love you, Mom called. I know, but love isn't enough if it comes with conditions. And respect isn't negotiable. I walked back to the bridal suite, leaving them with their apologies and regret and realization that some mistakes can't be fixed with words. 27 minutes later, I stood at the back of the aisle, holding white peonies, watching guests settle. I was alone. My parents had left, and I'd made peace with walking down the aisle myself. It felt right, symbolic of the independence I'd built. But as the music began, someone appeared beside me. "Miss Morrison," a gentle voice said, "would you allow me the honor?" I turned to see Robert Thompson, Marcus's father, in his best navy suit, with kind eyes holding no judgment, only warmth. "Mr. Thompson," I whispered, surprised. "Marcus told me what happened. He said you might be walking alone. I know I'm not your father, and I can't replace what you should have had. But if you'll have me, I'd be proud to walk you down that aisle." My eyes filled with good tears. Gratitude, recognition, belonging. "Are you sure?" "Sophia, you've been part of our family since the day you made our son smile the way he does when he talks about you. It would be my privilege." As we walked down the aisle, I saw Marcus's side beaming, his mother wiping happy tears, his sister grinning, his grandmother nodding approvingly. My side, college friends, colleagues, mentors, were smiling just as warmly. They understood the beauty in what was happening. And there at the end was Marcus, crying with joy. He mouthed, "I love you," and I could see he wasn't thinking about my parents' absence. He was just happy to be marrying me. When Robert placed my hand in Marcus's, he whispered something I'll never forget. "Take care of each other. That's all family really means." The ceremony was perfect because it was filled with genuine love. During the reception, my work colleagues spent the evening talking with Marcus's family, asking about their lives with genuine curiosity and respect. No condescension, just human connection. "This is what I was trying to write about," I told Marcus as we danced. The way people can connect when they approach each other with respect instead of prejudice." "Your parents missed something beautiful," he said. "They missed everything, but we didn't." 3 months later, Good Morning America aired the interview. I talked about class, community, dignity of work. And yes, I talked about my wedding, about how my father-in-law walked me down the aisle because he understood that family is about choosing to show up. The interview went viral. My book debuted at number 3 on the bestseller list. But more importantly, letters arrived from people who saw themselves in my story. Young women discouraged from marrying quote, partners. Adult children are cut off for choosing love over status. "You helped me understand I don't need anyone's permission to be happy," one letter read. 6 months later, my parents sent a congratulations card about the book's success. Polite, distant, asking if we could have lunch sometime. I never responded. Not from anger, that had faded, but because I'd learned the difference between people who love you when it's convenient and people who love you when it's hard. A year later, Marcus and I bought a house in a diverse, working-class neighborhood where neighbors included teachers, mechanics, small business owners, firefighters. People who worked hard, cared for community, measured success by relationships built rather than status accumulated. We host dinner parties, where journalism colleagues sit next to Marcus's firehouse buddies, where professors debate with construction workers, where conversation is real and laughter genuine. Last month, I spoke at Northwestern about pursuing meaningful work over impressive work. A young woman approached afterward with tears. "My parents want me to go to law school, but I want to be a social worker. They say I'm wasting my potential helping poor people." That night, I told Marcus, "Success isn't about impressing people who don't know you. It's about building a life that feels authentic to who you are." "Like this?" he asked, gesturing to our house, our neighborhood, our simple but satisfying life. "Exactly like this." As I write this, almost 2 years later, I don't regret setting boundaries with my parents. I don't regret walking down the aisle with Robert Thompson instead of waiting for conditional love. Family isn't about blood or obligation. Family is about showing up, seeing people clearly and loving them anyway. Choosing each other, especially when it's difficult. Marcus and I are expecting our first child now. When I think about the family we're building, I think about the Thompson kitchen table, where Sunday dinners happen every week, where everyone is welcome, where love is unconditional. You don't need anyone's permission to build a life that makes you happy. You just need courage to walk down your own aisle, with or without the people who were supposed to be there, surrounded by the ones who choose to show up for the right reasons. That's when you know you found your real family. That's when you know you're home. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.